Miracle, also called Mimi, believed love would change everything. She had married Vincent Okocha, the only son of one of the wealthiest families in Delta State. Despite the cold way his family treated her during their courtship, she thought that once she became their daughter-in-law, things would improve. She was wrong. From the moment she stepped into the Okocha mansion, she realized her life was about to become a living nightmare. She had assumed that, like most married couples, Vincent would get them their own apartment. But when she mentioned it, he laughed. Apartment? Why would I leave my father's house? Do you think I'm stupid? Miracle's heart sank. She was stuck in a house where she was not welcome. Her first morning in the Okocha household started with insults. Miracle, are you deaf? I said, wake up. Mrs. Monica's voice echoed through the room as she banged on the door. Miracle jolted up, startled. She had barely slept, but she rushed to open the door. Mrs. Monica folded her arms. You think this is your father's poor house where you sleep like a log? Get to the kitchen now and make breakfast for everyone. She hurried to the massive kitchen where Ejiro, her sister-in-law, stood in a designer robe sipping coffee. I hope you know how to cook rich people's food. This is not your village where you cook with firewood. Miracle swallowed her humiliation and started cooking. She made yam and egg sauce with freshly squeezed juice. When she served it, she waited for their approval. Mrs. Monica took a bite and spat it out. What is this rubbish? She screamed. Ejiro sniffed her food dramatically. It tastes like poverty. Vincent, who had just walked in, sighed. Miracle, must you embarrass me? Next time, let the cook handle it. Miracle bit her lip to stop the tears. She had tried her best, yet they found fault in everything she did. Miracle quickly realized she was not just a wife in the Okocha house. She was their servant. From morning till night, she was given endless tasks. Miracle, sweep the entire compound. Mrs. Monica barked. Miracle, wash all the clothes by hand. No washing machine for lazy girls. Ejiro added. Miracle, iron my clothes and make sure there's not a single wrinkle. Miracle, scrub the bathrooms with your hands. She worked tirelessly, hoping that one day they would accept her. But it only got worse. One afternoon, she spent hours cooking a full-course meal, determined to impress them. She set the table beautifully and waited. Mrs. Monica took one look and scoffed. Who told you to cook all this? Are you trying to poison us? Ejiro rolled her eyes. Did we ask you for food? You just wasted expensive ingredients. Then Vincent dropped the final blow. Miracle, stop trying too hard. You are embarrassing yourself. She stared at him, hoping to see some sympathy in his eyes, but there was none. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, she whispered, Vincent, why do you let them treat me this way? He sighed in frustration. Miracle, must you complain about everything? My mother and sister are just trying to help you become a better wife. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She had married a stranger. The mistreatment didn't stop inside the house. Even in public, Mrs. Monica and Ejiro found ways to embarrass her. One day, they took her shopping and she was excited, thinking they were finally warming up to her. But at the boutique, Mrs. Monica picked out a hideous dress and handed it to her. Wear this, she ordered. Miracle hesitated. Mommy, this dress it's too big. Ejiro laughed. Exactly. It suits you. We can't have people thinking you belong in our class. Everyone in the boutique laughed, and Miracle felt like disappearing. Another time, at a family event, Ejiro deliberately spilled red wine on her dress. Oops, sorry, she said with a smirk. Miracle forced a smile and went to clean up. But when she returned, she overheard Mrs. Monica telling her friends, "That girl is nothing but a liability. She married my son for money. I don't even know what he saw in her." Miracle's vision blurred with tears. No matter what she did, they would never see her as family. Lying on the massive bed beside Vincent, Miracle stared at the ceiling, her mind drowning in confusion and pain. Had he ever loved her, or did he marry her out of pity? The Vincent she had met 2 years ago was nothing like the cold-hearted man sleeping beside her now. The Vincent had chased her relentlessly, showering her with love, making her feel like the only woman in the world. But now she was nothing more than a glorified maid in his family's mansion. She turned to face him. "Vincent," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Do you even love me?" He sighed, irritated. "Miracle, must we talk about this now? I just want to sleep because it doesn't feel like you do. You watch your family humiliate me every day and you say nothing." "Miracle, you complain too much. Just ignore them." She blinked back, tears. Ignore them? How could she ignore being treated like dirt? As she lay there, memories of their past flooded her mind, the good and the bad. 2 years ago, Miracle had been just a simple girl from Warri, helping her mother sell food in her stall. She had dreams of furthering her education, but money was tight. One fateful evening, it started to rain heavily while she was closing up her mother's store. A sleek, black Range Rover pulled up beside her. The tinted window rolled down, and a handsome man in a crisp white shirt smiled at her. "Hey, beautiful, do you need a ride?" She had but hesitated. Rich men didn't just stop for girls like her. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied. But he didn't give up. The next day, he was back, waiting for her with a pack of shawarma and a chilled bottle of juice. "I just wanted to see you smile," he had said, handing her the food. She had laughed, shaking her head. "You don't even know me." "Then let me," he had said with a grin. Days turned into weeks, and Vincent kept coming back. He took her to fancy restaurants, bought her little gifts, and whispered sweet words that made her heart melt. She had fallen in love. The first red flag had come when she met his mother. Mrs. Monica had eyed her from head to toe and scoffed. "So this is the girl? Vincent, you must be joking." Miracle had felt small under her gaze, but Vincent had squeezed her hand. "Mommy, I love her." "Love? Do you even know who she is? What does her father do?" Miracle had swallowed hard. "My father, he's a carpenter." "Ma," Mrs. Monica had gasped, as if she had just heard something disgusting. "Vincent, you will not marry this girl." But Vincent had defied his mother. He continued to date Miracle, making her feel like she was worth fighting for, until she noticed something strange. Vincent told his mother everything. If they had a little disagreement, his mother knew about it the next day. Once, she had jokingly said, "Vincent, are you in a relationship with me or with your mother?" He had laughed it off, but deep down, she had been uneasy. She convinced herself it wouldn't matter. But now, as she lay beside him in their marital bed, she realized she had given everything to a man who had never truly been hers. Vincent had fought for her, but he had never fought for her respect. And she was beginning to wonder if marrying him had been the biggest mistake of her life. Miracle's life in the Okocha's mansion continues to be nothing short of a nightmare. Nothing she did was ever good enough. If she cleaned the house, Ejiro would run a finger over the furniture and scoff. "See how dust is still here. Is this how you used to clean your father's wooden shack?" If she cooked, Mrs. Monica would push her plate away in disgust. "Vincent, I hope you know you are reducing your life expectancy with this poverty-stricken food. Maybe she used that dirty oil her mother sells by the roadside." Laughter would follow, always laughter at her expense. Vincent would sit quietly, pretending not to hear, chewing his food like nothing was happening. She should have walked away. But where would she go? One evening, as she finished setting the dining table, Mrs. Monica and Ejiro sat on the couch, sipping wine. Their sharp voices floated through the air. "You better not let this girl infest your children with poverty," Mrs. Monica sneered. "I don't want my grandchildren looking like they were raised in a face me, I face you compound." Ejiro snorted. "Imagine them eating akara and gari for breakfast. God forbid!" Miracle's hands shook as she placed the last plate on the table. She turned to Vincent, hoping, praying, he would say something, but he simply scrolled through his phone. Unconcerned, tears stung her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of them. Instead, she swallowed the lump in her throat and whispered, "I will make sure my children never suffer." Mrs. Monica let out a sharp laugh. "Your children? You think you have a say? If you ever give birth in this house, I will personally raise them myself. No grandchild of mine will grow up with a poverty mentality." She turned to Vincent again. "Say something." He sighed, still focused on his phone. "Mimi, ignore them. You know how my mother talks." "That's all you have to say?" she whispered. "Don't start, please," he muttered. The only person in the house who treated her with decency was her father-in-law, Chief Okocha, but he was rarely around. His business kept him traveling from one country to another. The few times he was home, he would shake his head at the way his wife and daughter treated Miracle. "Monica, leave the girl alone," he said one night at dinner. After all, no one forced Vincent to marry her. He saw her, he wanted her, and he married her. Mrs. Monica's eyes flashed with anger. "And I will never forgive him for it." Chief Okocha sighed. "Then be angry with your son, not this girl. She's someone's daughter too." Miracle had felt a little relief that day, but she knew it wouldn't last, because the moment her father-in-law left for his next trip, her mother-in-law would make sure she paid for it. One day, Miracle gathered the courage to ask Vincent for something she had been thinking about for weeks. "Vincent, I want to start a business," she said softly as they lay in bed. He frowned. "Business? Why?" She took a deep breath. "Maybe if I start earning money, your mother will respect me." Vincent let out a short laugh. "Respect? From my mother? Mimi, even if you make 1 billion naira, she will still see you as the poor girl who trapped me with love. Still, I want to try. Can you set me up?" He turned to face her fully now, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "Why don't you ask your father to set you up? Or is it forbidden for a father to help his daughter?" Her heart stopped. He knew. He knew her father had nothing. He knew they had struggled all their lives. He knew her father couldn't even afford to give her a proper wedding. And now he was using it against her. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Vincent sighed. "You see? Always crying? This is why my mother doesn't like you. Go and sleep, Miracle. Stop stressing yourself." He turned off the light and went to sleep. But Miracle lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since she married Vincent, she realized something. She was completely alone. The day Miracle's best friend, Deborah, came to visit was one of the few days she felt a glimmer of happiness. Deborah had always been like a sister to her. They had struggled together back in Warri, sharing dreams of a better life. So when Miracle married Vincent, Deborah had rejoiced, believing her friend had finally escaped poverty. The moment she stepped into the Okocha mansion, her mouth fell open. "Jesus, Mimi, see house. My sister, God has done it for you." "Oh!" Miracle forced a smile, knowing the truth was far from what Deborah believed. The two friends sat in her room chatting. "See, Anne, I tap into your blessing," Deborah laughed, shaking her head. Mimi, you're enjoying this, your bed alone big past my room in worry. Miracle laughed lightly. She wanted to tell Deborah everything. She wanted to scream that she was suffering, but instead she just nodded and listened. Then, just as they were laughing about an old memory, the door burst open. Her mother-in-law's eyes darted to Deborah, then back to Miracle, disgust curling her lips. So this is the kind of friends you keep, birds of the same miserable feather. Mrs. Monica sneered. I should have known. Deborah blinked, confused. Good afternoon, Ma. Mrs. Monica let out a loud, mocking laugh. Did you say afternoon? My dear, what's good about your afternoon? That your poverty followed you here. Look at you, Mrs. Monica continued, eyeing her from head to toe. No class, no beauty, nothing. The same way your friend has been disgracing my son, I'm sure you're out there disgracing yourself too. Miracle's body trembled. Mommy, please. Mrs. Monica turned to her sharply. Shut up, you low-class girl. You should be ashamed bringing another hungry person into my house. Deborah's face changed. Ah, God will not do this one for me, she said firmly. If this is what marrying a rich man is, I reject it in Jesus' name. I don't want to be scoffed. You better reject it because no rich man in his right senses will look at you. Deborah turned to Miracle, her eyes blazing. Mimi, now so a B. Miracle looked away, her eyes wet with unshed tears. You're suffering and smiling. I thought you were enjoying, not knowing you are dying in silence. Mrs. Monica hissed. Deborah turned to her, voice filled with anger. Ma, with all due respect, your son did not pick my friend from the gutter. He saw her, he wanted her, and he married her. It's not her fault that you can't accept it. How dare you? Deborah, please let's go to the balcony, Miracle whispered, not wanting the situation to escalate further. I'm leaving already. I don't stay where people talk to me like I'm a piece of trash. Out on the balcony, away from Mrs. Monica's insults, Miracle finally let the tears fall. Deborah, I don't know what to do, she sobbed. Mimi, why are you still here? Why haven't you left? Miracle wiped her tears. Where will I go? I have no savings. Any money Vincent gives me, I send back home so my family can eat. I can't leave. I have nothing. Deborah's face softened. Mimi, she said gently, taking her hand, listen to me. A woman is not supposed to lose herself just because she's married. Miracle sniffed. See, forget all these riches and big houses. If you're not valued in your marriage, then what do you really have? You think your worth comes from this mansion? From the fact that you married rich? No, my sister, Deborah continued. Your worth is in who you are. If a man and his family cannot see your value, then they don't deserve you. But where will I go, Deborah? She whispered. Her friend sighed. Start saving, even if it's small. Start planning. I know you don't have anything now, but you have a brain, you have hands, and you have God. Don't let anyone keep you trapped in a life where you are nothing but a servant. I don't even know how to start. Deborah squeezed her hand. You will figure it out. Just promise me one thing. What? Promise me that one day, when you finally realize you are more than this suffering, you will walk away with your head held high. Miracle stared at her friend, the words sinking deep into her soul. For the first time in a long time, she saw things clearly. And for the first time, a small seed of courage began to grow inside her. Something shifted inside Miracle. After Deborah's visit, she stopped crying. She stopped begging. She stopped hoping for love or respect from Vincent's family. Instead, she began to plan. She realized something. She had been living like a maid in the mansion. So why not turn it into something useful? If they saw her as a housemaid, Then she would use that to her advantage. With the little money she had secretly saved from the small allowances Vincent gave her, she bought a cheap second-hand phone with a good camera. At night, when everyone was asleep, she watched YouTube videos on content creation, video editing, and how to grow an audience. The next morning, she started filming. She didn't show her face, just her hands as she cleaned the massive chandeliers, scrubbed the marble floors, arranged the expensive vases, and cooked meals fit for kings. She spoke softly in the videos, sharing cleaning and cooking tips, talking about how to manage a big house, and giving little insights into her daily life as an invisible wife. Her channel, Mimi's Home Secrets, was born. She recorded everything. The meals she cooked that Mrs. Monica and Ejiro never appreciated. The laundry she washed without thanks, and the spotless house she maintained while being treated like a nobody. But she never mentioned their insults or mistreatment. She just recorded and edited in silence. She endured everything, but now it wasn't out of helplessness. It was strategy. Weeks passed, and Vincent noticed something different. Miracle had stopped nagging. She had stopped crying. She had stopped trying to talk to him. Before, she would ask him why he never defended her, why he let his mother and sister insult her. She would beg for his attention. She would cry, but now, nothing. She moved around the house quietly, doing her chores without emotion. She didn't ask him for money or favors. She didn't complain when he came home late or when his mother threw insults at her. Vincent noticed, but he didn't care. As long as she wasn't disturbing him, it didn't matter what she was doing. He assumed she had finally accepted her place as his wife, and nobody in his house. What he didn't know was that the quietness wasn't submission, it was preparation. Miracle was building something in silence. Miracle's content creation journey was growing, but it wasn't easy. She filmed in secret, edited her videos at night, and uploaded them when no one was watching. At first, the views were slow, 10, 20, 50 views per video. It felt frustrating, but she kept going. Then, after a few weeks, something happened. One of her cooking videos, where she demonstrated how to make the perfect jollof rice, started getting traction. People loved her soft, calm voice and how she explained everything step by step. The video hit 5,000 views overnight, then 10,000. For the first time in a long while, Miracle felt hope. One evening, after cleaning the entire mansion as usual, she set up her phone on a small shelf in the kitchen to record. She was making a special egusi soup recipe. She was focused on her work when she suddenly heard Ejiro's loud voice. "What are you doing?" Before she could react, Ejiro had snatched the phone from the shelf. Miracle's heart dropped. She reached for the phone, but Ejiro quickly held it up. "What is this? You're recording in this house? Are you mad?" Her mother-in-law, who had been sitting in the living room, overheard and came in. "What's going on?" "She's filming like some jobless, hungry influencer," Ejiro hissed, shoving the phone in her mother's hand. Miracle's chest tightened as she scrolled through the videos. Then the woman's face twisted in disgust. "So, this is what you've been doing? Instead of carrying children for my son, you are making videos like a common roadside girl?" Miracle opened her mouth to explain, but before she could say anything, her mother-in-law raised her hand and slapped her. The sharp pain stung, but what hurt more was the anger in the woman's eyes. "You want to bring disgrace to my family. What if people recognize the house and start gossiping? You want to turn us into some social media joke?" Ejiro smirked. "Or maybe she's using our mansion to deceive people, making them think she's the madam of the house." She turned back to Miracle. "Delete every single video, now." Miracle's hands shook. She couldn't just delete everything. Those videos were her only escape. But before she could protest, her mother-in-law threw the phone on the hard marble floor. Crack! Miracle gasped as she saw the screen shatter. Her heart broke. All her work gone.